Preparation number 1 for Pom Poko. Mystery. Miyazaki declares that Pom Poko will be a failure. Okada, read Ghibli's textbook, page 46. Meow! Okay. I'll read it out loud, Mr. Nekoron. It's around page 46. Originally, the film Pom Poko was Hayao Miyazaki's idea. It's something he came up with after making Porco Rosso. Paku-san is Isao Takahata's nickname. He said to Paku-san, "Please do Shigeru Sugiura's manga 808 Raccoons. It's such a fun piece. I want you to make something that would make everybody crack up. A film that will make everybody in the movie theater double over in laughter." But Takahata said, "I don't quite get this comic book, and I think laughing out loud in theaters is the most ridiculous thing." This coming from the man who later creates the comic piece, My Neighbors, the Yamadas. But because Miyazaki depicted himself as a pig in Porco Rosso, he wanted Takahata to depict himself as a raccoon. Miyazaki himself is a greedy person, always needing female attention. And he knows Paku-san deceives people and even deceives himself, just like the raccoon dog. Back at that time, I don't know if it was just his personal thing, but he was obsessed with No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. I heard about this from an acquaintance of mine, the animator Hideaki Anno, because he also was obsessed with this book at one time. Porco Rosso was made in 1992 and Pom Poko in 1994. Anno wasn't active creatively during that time. Gunbuster was made in 1988 and Evangelion in 1995. So I think he was influenced by Miyazaki while he was a bit depressed. So I did know that Miyazaki was obsessed with the novel, but I knew that Anno was. All the folks in Gainax at the time knew that. While doing research for this video, I read that he started reading No Longer Human right after he finished Porco Rosso. He started saying things like, "I am tainted." So he wanted Takahata to apologize to the public as well and expose his own faults through his films. Because in Porco Rosso, although he credits Marxism to an extent, he rejects the theory at the same time. He concludes by saying, "I'm going to live with my greed." But he can't abandon Marxism on his own. That's why he asked Takahata to reveal himself too, through his work, to say that he is a raccoon dog. But as a result, Pom Poko didn't turn out like Miyazaki had expected. Miyazaki was okay with the word Battle of the Raccoons in the Japanese title, but then Heisei era was added. And also Pom Poko. Takahata was delighted. He was like, "That's it. If you add Heisei at the top and Pom Poko at the end, people will know how absurd this film is." He didn't necessarily want to make it light, but I'll talk about that next week. Anyway, they decided on this ridiculous title, and Miyazaki was extremely angry about it. Later, during a conversation with the literary figure Hisashi Inoue said, "I didn't like that title." Miyazaki jumped right in and said, "I know, that title is awful. With that title, the film will definitely fail." The producer Toshio Suzuki was at a loss. Miyazaki had done the same thing a few years back with the novelist Ursula K. Le Guin. When the title was finalized, Miyazaki was furious and said, "The film is going to fail." And then to Suzuki, he repeatedly said, "What are you trying to do, ruin my company?" Next, the team decided to stage it in Tama New Town and turn it into a story about urban development invading the natural environment. Miyazaki couldn't take it anymore and told the team to scrap the project, to scrap Pom Poko immediately. He even went on to say that if they wouldn't stop, he'd quit Ghibli. That was because, well, it's written very vaguely in this book. It's very vague. But the truth is, he didn't want Takahata to do a piece about nature or ecology. Miyazaki himself is often lauded for being environmentally conscious, but he has denied that many times. So he couldn't let Takahata make such a landmark Ghibli film, which, by the way, Takahata got 2 years and a huge budget for, while Miyazaki was only given a year to make Porco Rosso. He didn't want him to trumpet an environmentally friendly message. He didn't want to make things that simple. He had just reorganized the drawing team after it had fallen apart in only yesterday. He believed Paku-san would destroy it again. He complained that he was always the one working behind the scenes to bring in revenue, that Takahata was using all the profit that Miyazaki made and the improved drawing team and creating a socially conscious film that made himself look good. He said if they don't stop the pre-production of Pom Poko, he would quit Ghibli. The interesting thing is that he never told this to Takahata. He always said these things to Suzuki, the producer. He's like a teenage girl. He kept complaining for a month. In this book, Suzuki writes that he thought Miyazaki had gone mad. It was that bizarre. And then what happened? Miyazaki finally lost his temper and yelled at them for 8 hours straight. And then suddenly he grabbed his chest and collapsed. Everybody just watched him, not knowing whether to call an ambulance or not. It seems that they couldn't. Suzuki sounds a bit reluctant to tell the whole story in this book, but I assume that he really thought that Miyazaki had gone mad, and he didn't want other people to see his disturbed state. No one called an ambulance. Eventually, he managed to stand up and go home. Everything about him quitting, all that stuff was forgotten. But the point is, Miyazaki, who was desperate to stop this project, cried his eyes out when he saw Pom Poko for the first time. He cried and cried. Suzuki, sitting next to Miyazaki, was like, "Oh my god, he's crying!" And Miyazaki went home crying. Now, why did he cry so much? I want you to think about this as you watch this film again, which will broadcast soon. We'll talk about it again in the next Nico Nico Live. Why did Miyazaki, who was desperate to stop this project, cry his eyes out? I think you will discover new things if you see the film again in this way. Okay, let's move on. You know, Ghibli is so interesting. Okay, Nekoron. I can't get my hand in. Is it here?